You're on, and then I just have to change to. Okay, go for it. Okay, so we're gonna start over. We're talking
Hmm.
about chakras and motivation. So go for it.
Well, like you said, that you got all this stuff going and you want to be there. You always want to be there. To me, that's like a properly functioning, probably orange red chakra. Whereas, like, my zest for life is not there anymore. I don't want to be anywhere. I just want to, like, go into a cave and
Right.
wake me up when it's over.
Right.
And so I see it as a dysfunction in that way. Um, so that you have purpose, and I think that's what makes you want to be everywhere, right? And do all this stuff. So,
Yeah.
did you always have it, and did I lose mine, or did yours come from somewhere and develop along the way, or?
That's a great question. I think for me, purpose came from these innate spiritual kind of, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but these awakening experiences that I had when I was trying to get sober. And I think through that struggle of bringing myself to the rock bottom, to the brink of my own choice about do I really want this life or not, I think that was a crossroads, a fork in the road that was like, okay, so you're like, if there is no gray area, it's like, do you want to be hateful and resentful and destructive, or do you want to be uh, you surrender to a greater source and power and live by those graces even when you don't feel like it. And it was like that fork in the road where it was like I was leaning in both directions. I was like kind of swiveling back and forth, and I realized that there was just so much suffering that I was just dry. Like I had this sick obsession with watching myself deteriorate, and I got pleasure out of that pain. You know, it was like the self sabotage became an addiction, and so like get I would do something. I would like get angry at someone, and then I would get ashamed for feeling angry or for acting out. I would feel ashamed for acting out. And because of that shame I had for acting out, I would get even more destructive. So it was like this ongoing cycle of reinforcement. And then when I just remember, like, I just got fed up. I was like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to live this way anymore. And I started meditating. And that was like the turning point for me. I started meditating, and I did this kind of like Tibetan Buddhist style meditation where you just follow your breath in and out. And it's called like shamatha and vipassana. And then I read books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And remember, this is when I'm like 17, so this is like the gateway drug, so to speak, into spirituality. I started researching aliens, which it sounds kind of weird, but for some reason, the idea of extraterrestrial forces gave me like a sense of connection to something greater. And it was it at the time I was obsessed with the idea of being abducted. So I thought like, yeah, I thought like um if I like pray or like send out like brain signals to these aliens, maybe like they'll come get me and then I'll be abducted. But I didn't realize that what you know, since I've studied Jung, I didn't realize at the time what I realize now, which is that the aliens are actually a symbol for a sense of like wanting to be connected with that alien consciousness, that side of myself that I never experienced before, and wanting that to take me away, wanting to be abducted by that force. And so that was kind of my gateway to spirituality. I was like, aliens, meditation, reading books like by Thich Nhat Hanh and Eckhart Tolle and all these kind of mainstream spiritualists. And yeah, man, and that's like then I started hearing kind of the voice of my soul, which was kind of a deep
Whoa,
internal.
whoa, whoa. Okay, let's. I want to go back over some of the stuff you already. That's a great point, and I want to focus a lot on that point. But before I do that, I want to go back over some other stuff
Sure, sure.
you already talked about. First, you said that you literally wanted to be abducted by aliens, and you were trying to send out the signal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I heard from you. My question is, how long after that moment was it until you met Roger Strachan?
Oh shit! The first time I met Roger, um, it was probably I was a year or two after that. I was like 18 or 19, and I came back home from treatment for like a home visit, and because I was in long term treatment, I was in treatment for like years. Like most of my adolescence, I was just like shipped off in these like strict centers and programs. Anyways, so I came home one time, and my parents, I guess, had hired Roger to do some therapy, and they were like, "Hey Ryan, like we want you to do a session with Roger," you know, and so I did, and then we didn't talk for like it was like he just introduced me to my sub personalities. Basically, that was the session, and then we didn't talk. I didn't talk to Roger for another 3 or 4 years. It was no, it was almost 5 years. Um, and my dad and I, what happened was my dad and I were fighting. Like it was like we had done all this work in healing, and I have been sober for a while, but I'd still we would get to these points where I would just be like, Dad, go, like he would get controlling, and I would get rebellious, and it was like we were carrying over the same habits from 15, 16, 17 years old, and but now I was an adult, and he was, not really he wasn't my caregiver or my parent anymore in the same sense. And so I was like, Dad, like I don't want to be in this type of relationship with you anymore. And so he said, well, I'll hire Dr. Strachan so that we can work out our issues. And we did that. And ever since then, my dad and I have been really close because, I mean, you guys see Roger the theorist, which is great, but Roger is the best therapist. That's where he really shines. I mean, his theory is fantastic, but he'll even tell you himself that um, his gift is in the work, in the facilitation. And so that's when Roger and I really hit it off. And then he just said, I want to mentor you. And so I did a training, I think it was like a 200-hour training with him. And then he said, "You've got me for life." So it's just been no looking back since then. So
So, like, it was almost 2 years since you wanted to be abducted by aliens before you first made contact, and then it was more like 5, 6 years before
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
contact was fully established. Okay,
yeah,
and way back at the choice point, where you said that you just got fed up.
yeah.
How into that moment can you take us?
Well, dude,
Because that's the point. Like, how long can you go before you get fed up? Like, how long can a person go before? Can a person live their whole life with never getting to that fed up point? So, what's that fed up point like?
yeah, that's a great question. I hated myself, and so I would literally look in the mirror, and I would just fucking say like, "I hate you. I hate you." And I fucking meant it, And then like I had this buddy at treatment where we would just sit down outside on the picnic table and just talk about how much we hate ourselves. And then we would like we were just so miserable. And then we would like we would do this ritual where we would like smoke fake bowls because we were like resentful that we had to be sober. So he would like pack the imaginary bowl and like light it, and then he would like pass it to me and I would light it, and we'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude. I was just a miserable kid, man, and um, it was that anger. It was like I would be out of control. Like I remember one time we were playing basketball and I was getting like aggressive with this other player, and he was being a dick too. But I was the one who kind of got scapegoated. So the whole court stopped and said, "Well, Ryan, you can't play anymore." And I was like, "What the fuck do you mean I can't play anymore?" And I took this big push broom. It was like a big court push broom, and I just started smashing it against the ground. There's a lot of stories like that where I was just my rage was just out of control, and I hated myself for it. I hated the fact that I continued to do the things that made other people not want to be around me. And
So you're getting fed up with your lack of self control behavior.
yeah, I mean, I didn't want to be around myself. Who wants to be? I mean, other people didn't want to be around me, but like, I didn't even want to be around myself. Like, who wants to be around somebody that is like a ticking time bomb that you don't know like what you're gonna say or what's gonna happen next that's gonna make this kid fly off the handle? And that was my life. And there's a lot of different ways to go through treatment. Some kids put on a smile and they fake it the whole way through, and then they go back to dealing drugs, or they die later or whatever. Some kids do go back and forth between putting on a smile and rebelling. And then there's the way of doing it where you're just authentic, and that's the rare way to go through treatment. I did it that way. So every moment, you knew what I was feeling, and I was transparent, even if I was completely pissed or if I was really happy. I always wore my emotions on my sleeve, and so you never had to guess what was going on in my head. Um, and I'm glad I went through it that way, because that's why I'm still sober today. A lot of kids, they just faked it, and then a lot of my friends have died. A lot of my friends, like over 10 of like people that I love, are dead because they couldn't get themselves into authenticity. So, but yeah, there was that point where I decided that I was worth fighting for, and that I was going to work towards a better version of myself no matter what. And that's where the work was. So like it was like, okay, so if I fuck up, I'm going to start over. It was like that level of commitment where it's like I'm going to see this through, period. And so there was times where I would slip up and go back into old behavior, but I had that drive and commitment. And I can't tell you how much meditating helped, because I couldn't have gotten control over my anger without it. I mean, the fact that there was people teaching me, like in these books I was reading, no, you can actually observe your thoughts and your feelings without being identified with them, and without letting them run you. That was a totally foreign concept to me, because I just thought that you had to act out whatever you were feeling. So I had no separation. And then I started having these profound experiences in meditation. And then I get addicted to meditation, right? Like I'm getting sober from alcohol and drug abuse, but now I'm addicted to getting high on meditation, which was great. And I got addicted to exercise. So I was like 18 years old and I was bench pressing like 275 pounds, because you don't have anything else to do while you're in treatment. You might as well lift weights for at least 2 hours a day. So I just got shredded. I was much stronger then than I ever was in my whole life, or have been since then. And so, yeah, I was like meditation, exercise, aliens. Like, that's what I liked. That's what I thought. And the alien thing was huge. Like, I was paranoid for a while. Like, I thought that every airplane in the sky was an alien. And we were in Arizona, in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, like on this ranch. And so there's a lot of weird shit up in the sky. Like you see weird shit at night. Like, and I don't know if they're military drills or what, but it you start if you have any suspicion about aliens, like just live in Arizona for a year and look up at the sky in the desert, and you're gonna see some shit. And you're gonna be like, man, that's weird. And then so I thought I took it to paranoia. I thought every airplane was an alien. I thought there was aliens watching me from the bushes. I thought that the aliens were gonna come find me. I really wanted them to come find me. And so I was like reading all these conspiracy theories. We had access to a computer for school, and so I would go into the computer lab and I would go on like Wikipedia and stuff and print out different theories. And that's kind of, but that was all obsession. Like ultimately, that was all spirituality for me. That led into whatever I thought aliens was actually like my connection to the universe and wanting contact with God, so to speak. And and I'm not disputing, I actually think that aliens have to exist just by a mathematical probability.
Well, if
But
you believe in planets, then yeah.
right, right, exactly. So, but really, like whether or not they're here or somewhere else, what was really important was the feeling of the adventure of spirituality, and like aliens is a great image for that. It's totally foreign, it's totally new. It's like your soul is meeting itself in a way that it's never thought of before, and it's like what could possibly be out there on the farthest points that I can see in the sky. And I think that obsession and that paranoia kind of gave me something to do, and it got me through. It was like a form of entertainment.
Okay, and so when I stopped you, you had just mentioned you started hearing voices.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
so let's go back to that point. When you had been meditating for and addicted to meditation for multiple years before you started hearing this voice.
Well, I would say I started hearing the voice before, but it got louder. So what happened was I went to when I okay, I was 16 years old or 15. I don't know. It was 2009 or something. I wake up at 2 in the morning in my bed at my family home. And there are two huge men that I've never seen before in my room, and my dad saying it's time to go. Okay, so I figure out what's happening. I'm getting escorted by bodyguards to treatment. I figured it out. So I'm getting taken out of my bed against my will. And the first time I heard the voices was at that moment, because I was thinking, okay, like maybe I should pull out a knife and try to like just like threaten them to get some space and run away. Or, my mind was racing through all my options. The first time I heard the voice was then, because it came to me like from my stomach and said, just go. It was just this moment of clarity, the conscience. It was my conscience, I think, or my soul. And it was just like, just go. And then the next
Okay,
time, go
well,
ahead.
is that was it a different voice or was it the same voice that you think with?
Oh, it was a
Uh,
different voice. It's not, you can tell as soon as, if you ever hear that voice, it's, it's like a spirit or something inside. It's like the wind is blowing inside of you. I can't explain it. It's like chilling.
was it more like feeling it than hearing it? But like you felt the
It's
words?
like a multiple sensory experience. So it's like, have you ever heard of the concept of synesthesia?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like you can taste sounds. You can whatever hear.
Like the inputs mapped to the wrong senses or different senses?
Yeah, it's like input mapped to all these different senses, and then you might get the chills, or but yeah, it's a feeling. Like for me, it's like there's like a bubbling up of energy and chills, and like a very feminine, like in Jungian terms you might call it like an anima, but it was a very like comforting, motherly push to do the right thing. And you just know it's the right thing. It just feels right. And then I heard it again. I was like lying to I was in treatment and I was lying to my therapist. And it was really funny because, because I told her, I was like, I was just lying to you, but then I had this voice inside of me tell me to tell the truth. And she's like, yeah, Ryan, that's your conscience. And she was laughing, like, well, duh. But to me, like, that was a foreign experience, you know? And that was the beginning. And then when I started meditating, it like clears the channel, it
So
gets
you
all,
heard it before you started meditating, and
yeah. And then I think the
meditation,
meditation,
you into it?
strengthened it. Yeah. 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 So, yeah, that voice, man, I mean, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, that's the purpose. That no matter how fucked up I am or how many mistakes I make, I know that that voice believes in me, and that it's always my saving grace. It's like my starting point. So, yeah, because I think for a lot of people, change is really hard because they don't have their starting point. Like there is no wiping the slate clean because there's like, if you're dealing with shame or um, lack of motivation or low self worth, let's say, and then you don't have like a mechanism by which you can actually start fresh. Then what you're doing is you're carrying over. You're trying to carry shame and all these deep self-sabotaging feelings into a new paradigm, but it doesn't fit, so you get dragged backwards. So like if you don't have that mechanism to restart and to be like, because I had like, that's the key, man, for in my opinion, is that at any moment, if I'm fucking up, I have a restart mechanism where I can go to soul, and then it's like, okay, like whoever I just was 2 minutes ago is not defining who I am now or 2 minutes from now. So if you don't have that restart button, then it's just like, it's really difficult. So I'd say like establishing the restart button, um, where you can even have a relapse in behavior or beliefs or attitude or emotion, but that doesn't define you. It's not a failure; it's a learning experience. And so the paradigm shifts from either or to this ability to always have a graceful mechanism by which you can carry yourself forward and turn that shit into compost, into fertile soil. And if you can do that, then there's no stopping you. Nothing can stop you, because no matter how fucked up it gets, you're an alchemist. You can turn that shit into flowers. That's it. That's what it is.
All right. I'm gonna bounce from the screen now and go back to the chat and just watch from there. I'm glad I came on. This was fun.
All right, Grizz, thanks for coming. And that was great. Those were great questions. Those were awesome questions. All right, so I got to move this back. That was fun. All right, we'll read some comments here. Michael, how you doing? Let's see. I'm gonna put Boy Meets Work. Good to see you. Boy Meets Work says, "I came at the perfect moment. I want to be abducted I want to be abducted by aliens. Good afternoon, everybody." That's funny. Yeah, that I really did. Michael says, "I'm an immigrant and therefore an alien. I could always lock Ryan in a truck of a stolen car. But yeah, great time to sign on." That's funny. Jordan Peterson says, "Hello, bud. Don't drink coffee. It makes you fart." And Gregory Witcher says, "Wow." I'm going to put my headphones back on. Grizz, I don't know if he'd give himself credit, but he's a pretty good interviewer. Gregory Witcher says, Dr. J, Rehab Made You Better by Gassy. Pavlov says, did you interview Michael Jones? Michael Jones. I don't know who that is. Michael Jones. Let me look that up. Nope, I definitely didn't interview Michael Jones. Anyways. What do we talk about next, everybody? Where do we go from here? Oh, good. We've got more people joining the Discord. If you scroll to the top of the chat, you will see our Discord server. And in that server, you can join our discussion here on Sorting Myself Out, where we go over various topics, meaningful things. And let's see what's going on in the chat now. E. Michael Jones. Oh, E. Michael Jones. E. Michael Jones. And I'm going to have to edit this live stream later because there was that dead period where nobody could hear Grizz. And then, yeah, I think it would be good to have that. E. Michael Jones is a magazine editor, lecturer, and writer, and has been a leading social critic for over 2 decades. He has written over a dozen books, including Degenerate Moderns, Monsters from the Id, The Slaughter of Cities. Interesting. No, I've never heard of E. Michael Jones, so that's something interesting to look into. Wow. Okay. Transcending Suffering. That is a good topic, says Gregory. Yeah, transcending suffering is a good topic. And I think that is a good segue from that concept of the alchemy or turning that turning point where you take that experience of suffering and you are able to bring it forward with you by having that switch, that restart, that ability to bring it into meaning. You know, it's like if you broaden your scope, if you can have a framework of living that encompasses the suffering, where the suffering is now positioned within a greater context of a narrative that you're living into, a purpose, a greater design, a framework of reality, right? Because if suffering is the framework, right? Like it's just if the biggest, greatest framework for reality you have is this shit and this sucks, then anything nestled within that framework is invalidated, right? And so what I think what we need is a way of living that is able to encompass all of our experiences, and so that deeper connection that comes from those gut feelings, those soul connections, those heartfelt inspirations is nestled within this framework where every experience you have has context and meaning. And it doesn't mean that you look at your minute decisions of, am I going to get a slushie or a French fry as you don't overanalyze things, right? Like that, I'm not saying that, but your life is placed within a map, like Peterson's maps of meaning, that you have context for where you are and where you're going. And I think that's really underrated and really important. And that we do need a way of seeing reality and perceiving things that gives us that ability to fall back on when we're in the face of suffering and nihilism and self-doubt, shame, or things like that. Because if we can't fall back on those greater intuitions, then those moments of suffering can really take us out because we have no context of interpretation, or there's no meaning relative to that experience. So I think that we should consider, and it's not just a matter of intellectual framework right? It's a matter of faith, uh, in the sense of knowing and feeling that your reality has substance that you can depend on. And that's why I think it's important that we have a higher power, or and it doesn't have to be a mystical belief per se, but it can be. It can be this more spiritual thing, but something that we take both comfort and inspiration from, and that also, to quote Nietzsche, a man with a why can endure any how, right? These whys matter, and the whys aren't just in the ability to intellectually reason your way into a framework of being, but the ability to also to feel your way into that framework of being through experience, through whether it be a meditation or a questing experience, or for some people a psychedelic experience can give them that grounding feeling. But we have to have a memory and a direct sensation which we can rely upon. It's not enough to have a concept. We have to have that extra sensory experience that I was talking about with Grizz. It has to be connected to multiple modes of being simultaneously to have the weight to pull us through the eye of the needle and get us on into a meaningful and purposeful life. So it has to have both the conceptual wherewithal, has to have a basis in experience and feeling on a multisensory basis. So sensation, emotion, imagination, all these things matter when we place ourselves within a framework of transcendent meaning that can handle the various experiences that life is going to throw at us. So when I say extrasensory experience, I'm talking about hitting that. I'm talking about hitting it from multiple angles at once. And so, have an idea, like have a belief system that's intellectually coherent enough, right? That's one. Ideas matter, right? As much as some people will tell you that ideas are superficial or whatever, the ideas that we have and the way that we articulate them are important. They do provide us with something substantial, and they are something substantial in of themselves and in of themselves. Okay, and then we got to look at intellectual and conceptual, and then we got to look at, okay, well, what is the basis that if I had to throw out my ability to think, what is the basis for my trust in this reality? And that's where it comes to I have to really have an experience, a felt sense of connection and a felt sense of trust in that greater thing. And then when you combine that with the more conceptual framework, that's complete. That completes that's the yin and the yang. The yang will provide you with a structure by which you can experience these things phenomenologically, and the yin will provide you with a feeling and a sensation that reaffirms that structure, and then they feed into each other. So we might alter our belief system based on experience, or our experience might change on the subsequently after a belief has been challenged or adapted. So it can go both ways. We can have profound feelings that change our beliefs. That's the intuitive righteous mind that Jonathan Haidt talks about. If you have a strong enough experience, then you will inevitably start to change your concepts to fit your reality, right? I mean, we are intuitive beings, so that will happen naturally. On the other hand, if you have a great ability to reason and to see the path that you're on and the direction that you're headed in. And you have an ability to, like a philosopher, create a concept of reality on the basis of that, of looking out onto the landscape of life and seeing the components and adding extra components with your mind. Then that can also start to move that intuitive elephant a little bit to where you start slowly shifting experientially. So it's not mutually exclusive. Anyways, this is all heady stuff. I don't even know if it's making sense. Okay, let's see here. Grizz says, "What's up with school, tests coming up and such?" School is good. I'm actually flying out to California for a intensive workshop with a couple of the instructors next week, and that'll be good. I'll be there for 4.5 days. And we're going to cover, right now, one of the classes is focusing heavily on James Hillman. The other class is focusing on psychology and literature. So we're going to focus on those elements of both Jungian and archetypal psychology. So that'll be good. And then what the big thing that's coming up as far as there's a big test at the end of it's a while from now, but it's the Masters qualifiers that are coming up in 2020, and those will be basically testing my 2 years of graduate studies, and there'll be a lot of the questions I think are in essay format, and what you have to do is it takes all the readings and all the classes that we've had, and I guess I don't have the questions. So, but apparently it asks you questions on the basis of testing your retaining of that experience and knowledge, and the fluidity by which you can exercise those concepts. And so that's the big thing. And if you pass that, then you do get that master's degree, and then you go into your PhD dissertation, which is like, fingers crossed by summer of 2020, the end of summer of 2020, I'll be starting that PhD process. So yeah, I'll keep y'all posted. So right now I'm doing a ton of reading, lots of lectures online. We'll have research papers to write coming up here soon, and that's kind of what it's looking like. So yeah, thanks for asking. Gregory Witcher, what about when suffering is because pure malevolence, consistent and unavoidable, allowed to continue because of corruption inherent in the system? Oh, we got a couple good questions. What about transcending intelligence? Ever notice that the most indoctrinated psychologically and sociopolitically are always the most intelligent? The smarter you are, the better your excuse. Yeah, that's a good point. You can definitely use intelligence to justify otherwise unuseful beliefs. And then Gregory says, I will not breathe a word of my loss, but my ex is a 152 IQ with a 15-point standard deviation with the Stanford Binet, and she is almost certainly borderline personality disordered, and she has inherited millions from her grandfather, who invented the diesel pile driver in 1949. It sounds like well, it sounds like a very that's a full boat right there. The IQ and the personality issues along with the inheritance. I'd love to hear stories about that. Okay, so let's just try to answer. Let's backtrack on intelligence here. No, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not saying that this isn't an IQ thing, okay? So I'm not saying that intelligence is a prerequisite to the ability to live within a meaningful framework. Now, here's what I am saying. The more intelligent you are, the harder you have to work to create a framework that makes sense. That's why you have the poor man, Dr. Peterson, writing this Maps of Meaning textbook, because the smarter you are, the harder you have to work to justify your own faith and your own spirituality, right? So that's true. You have to lay out a framework that works for you, but it's on the basis of what you need. So the more intelligent you are, the more thinking that you're going to be doing, most likely, depending on your uh, idiosyncratic style of intelligence, about providing a framework for your reality. There's nothing wrong with having a framework that's more simplified if it works for you. And so it just doesn't. The factor of intelligence is on a spectrum, but that spectrum is not relevant to your ability to live a meaningful life. It's only relevant to how hard you have to think in order to, or how many, the process that you have to go to in order to reconcile your own intuitions. So yeah, I think that when we're thinking of intelligence versus what I'm saying is that we just need a framework that makes sense to us. And that framework has to at least have enough coherence that if there are extreme experiences that you're up against, that you have a stability by which you can test against it. And for your question, Gregory, what about the malevolence of other individuals, the evil in the world? I would say it's the same thing. It's a matter of the ability to rely on your own experience and rely on that sense of having something greater than yourself, a purpose greater than yourself, a meaning greater than yourself that can withstand. It has to be. It has to be something greater, of greater value and greater significance than the suffering which it's faced with. And Peterson talks about that. So yes, yeah. So that's really, I think, the bottom line is. It doesn't matter how intricate your theories are. You can be a Ken Wilber or a Jordan Peterson or a Sam Harris, right? And you're not necessarily going to be living a more meaningful life on the basis of your intelligence. That's just not the way it works. But you will, you will be pushed to make sense of things in more intricate ways. And that's evident. So, but yeah, I think living meaningfully has almost. I don't think know if it has any relevance to IQ. And then who knows, other types of intelligence which have failed to have been measured by any standard testing so far, at least in an empirical sense. So, yeah. Okay. Uh, HG Tudor is going ham. The midichlorians. The new Star Wars movie Pavlov is coming out soon. Apparently, we will be reintroduced to the Emperor, to Palpatine. So that will be interesting. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I can't get enough Star Wars, even though I have to say the recent movies have not been very convincing. And but it's the spirit of Star Wars that I love, and it's the it's just the mythology behind it, and the hero's journey that was in those first three movies. I love it. I love it. And they can try to fuck it up, but they can't take away the feeling that I had back when I first got introduced. And then I watched the Clone Wars on Netflix, the cartoon series, the television series. I really liked that too. That was great. I love Ahsoka. Ahsoka, the I don't know what species of alien she is, but the young Padawan, Anakin Skywalker's Padawan. I love that character. It's one of my favorite characters. So, Grizz mentioned explaining stuff to us is great for practice for masters. Yeah, exactly, man. I think so too. I'm gonna continue doing that and do that even more as I go along here over the next year. Um, yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, what do you think, everybody? Have we done enough? Enough streaming for now? Um, yeah, and Grizz, I have a few topics. One that I need to dive into an explanation of at some point. I'm going through a lot of James Hillman's work, as you're aware, and I'm gonna have to come up with a coherent presentation for some of his ideas, which is something that I'm a little. It's a little daunting because his ideas are very difficult, and a lot of them are very insightful, but a little bit difficult to track. And I think I could do it. I think I could do it. I just need. I'm still reading him, so I'll be ready for that soon. And yeah, I think I'm gonna need to start going over some of the other topics too to get ready for that testing. Michael says, I want to point out that I wanted to point out that intelligence is a double-edged sword and can work for you and against you. When it's against you, you're intelligent, and you're intelligent, you're pretty screwed. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's a good point on its own merits. To stand by itself. I was just qualifying that as far as the topic of living meaningfully, we have to separate these things out. Um, Read his bio and see what broke him when he was little. It'll help you understand it. You're talking about Hillman? All right. All right, everybody. I got to get going. Got lots to do today. Thank you very much, Grizz, for your uh, brief interview of me, and that was really fun. You asked great questions. Thanks for listening to me ramble on. That was a real treat. And thanks for everything you do for the channel. Again, the link to the Discord, I'll post it again here. Join our server. It'll be good. It's in the chat, the live chat. And yeah, okay, I'll check out. I don't know much about his childhood. I'll check that out, Chris. All right, everybody. See ya.